to understand, to find out what right and wrong are. We know this innately, something that our body mechanism possesses at the time of its birth. As soon as we get mature enough, we get to know what right and wrong are. We know what good and evil are, and our conscience is is something that tells us this. And so, therefore, this is something which God has given every human being as a barometer. It's like a moral compass which everyone has. Basic morality is something that is not required to be explained. And when the Quran actually discusses some aspects of basic morality, it is not because it is pointing out these aspects for the first time or it wants to educate us on these aspects. It is actually to remind us of what already we know. So all moral teachings of the Quran, they must be understood. They are primarily given so that we are reminded of what we already know. So with this background, we will now take up the second important uh, category or second important content of the chapter that we will be studying, and that is what is the fundamental principle in this regard? What is the very basic? We have discussed the basic issues, but as far as the fundamental principle is concerned, it is mentioned in Surah 16, which is Surah Nahl, verse number 9, which is right in front of you. It says, إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. God enjoins you to justice, goodness, and spending on the kindred, and forbids lewdness, evil, and arrogance. He admonishes you so that you may take heed. So you can clearly see that this verse is a fundamental verse. An outline in this verse is actually the fundamental principles of the guidance which is provided by the Quran in this matter. The bases on which human nature requires of a human being to adopt good morals and leave bad ones, they are explained in these verses or in this particular verse. So the principle of good and evil are in conformity with human nature, and hence they have been acknowledged in all divine religions. I can go on to say that the Ten Commandments of the Torah are based on these, and the Quran too has actually explained them as part of its moral directives. So three things are stated positively and three negatively. So once again, Inna Allah ya'muru bil adl, Inna Allah ya'muru bil adl wal ihsan wa ita'i zil qurba. So the first thing is adl, which is justice. This means that whatever obligation is imposed on a person vis-a-vis a fellow human being, he discharges it the way it exactly is and in an impartial manner. Whether his fellow human beings are weak or powerful, and whether they are liked or disliked by us. So this is something that has to be done impartially in a totally unbiased way. So the Quran has said this, referred to this aspect in a very, very explanatory way, in fact, and this is verse 135 of the fourth surah, which is Surah Nisa. It says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qist shuhada'a lillah walau ala anfusikum awil walidaini wal aqrabin in yakun ghaniyan aw faqiran fallahu awla bihima fala tattabi'ul hawa an ta'dilu wa in talwu aw tu'ridu fa inna allaha kana bima ta'maluna khabira. Believers adhere to justice by bearing witness for God, even though it be against yourselves, your parents, or your kinsfolk. If someone is rich or poor, God is worthy that his law be followed for both. So, by leaving aside the guidance of God, do not be led by base desires, lest you swerve from the truth. And remember, if you distort what is the truth and what is just, or evade it, God is well aware of all your deeds. So clearly, this is something which the Quran tells us, that even if adhering to justice means that that act of adherence to justice is going to go against our own interest, the interest of our parents, and the interest of our relatives, even then justice has to be adhered to. And the other thing is that whether a person is rich or poor, that should not be a consideration in the dispensation of justice. Such is the emphatic directive that is mentioned in this way in the Quran. And the second verse, which is of similar import, is in Surah Ma'idah, verse 8. It says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu kunu qawwamina lillahi shuhada'a bil qist ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. Believers, be those who adhere to justice by bearing witness for God, Your animosity for some people should not induce you to turn away from justice. Be just. This is nearer to piety. Have fear of God. Indeed, God is well aware of all your deeds. So, this, of course, is another very, very important standard which the Quran has put forth here. And that is, not only should we be just to our friends, we have to be just to our enemies as well. And as the Quran has said, that it should not be that we, because of the fact that we have animosity with the nation, we should swerve away from justice. No, even if there is a nation in front of us who might have had been unjust to us in any way, even then the Quran says that if your time comes to mete out justice and you are sitting in the chair of the judge, and that particular nation who might have wronged you is in front of you as a party and is actually in the right in that particular instance, you should not settle your score with that nation. You must have to be just. So this is the ultimate standard views that could have been adopted, that not only should we show justice to our friends, to our acquaintances, to those we know, but also we have to be just to our enemies. There couldn't have been a more stringent, a more tough standard for justice, which the Quran has adopted here. So this is the first thing which this verse mentions in a positive way. In Allah ya'muru bil adl. The next thing is ihsan, which is goodness. So it is over and above justice and is the pinnacle of ethics and morality. It means that not only should a right be fulfilled, but that it be fulfilled in a manner that a person is generous and considerate in this regard. A person should give more than what is due on him and should be happy to take what is less than is due. It is this attitude which develops in a society the values of sympathy, compassion, sacrifice, sincerity, gratitude, selflessness, magnanimity. And it is a result of these values that life becomes sweet and blessed. It becomes a society, we become part of a society in which humanity reigns supreme, in which it is this human consideration that becomes our topmost priority. The third thing which is mentioned in this verse, in Allah ya'muru bil adl wal ihsan wa ita'izil qurba, which is spending on the near ones. It is one of the most important corollaries of goodness and determines one of its specific forms. It means that the near ones are not merely worthy of justice and goodness from a person, they also deserve to be thought of as having a share in one's wealth. They should never be abandoned in case of need and deprivation, and like a person's own family, their needs should also, as far as possible, be generously fulfilled. Viewers, this is an extraordinary thing which the Quran has said, that we have to take care of our relatives, our blood relations. They, we owe them whatever we have, we owe this to them, especially if they are in need. And not only that, even if they are not in need, the Quran here, the way it expresses showing goodness to our relatives means that whatever they are, in whatever situation they are, we have to be kind, considerate, and compassionate to them. So these are the three positive virtues which are spelled out in this verse. Ya'murukum bil adl, ihsan, and ita is il qurba. Justice, which is adl, ihsan, which is goodness, ita is il qurba, which means spending on our kindred, on our relatives. Now we come to the three negative ones. Yanha anil fahshai wal munkari wal bagh. So these are the three ones. So, starting off with the first thing which is mentioned as in a negative way is fahsha, which is lewdness or lust. So, the way it is mentioned here, it connotes fornication, homosexuality, and similar acts of lewdness. So, that they have to be abstained from. The second thing which is mentioned is munkar, yanha anil munkar. So, it is the opposite of ma'ruf and refers to evils which mankind has generally recognized, regarded as evils, and has always called them evils, and so obvious is their evil nature that no argument is even needed to prove them. In every good tradition of religion and culture, they are regarded as evil. At another instance, the Quran, by using the word ithm for munkar, has clarified that they actually, or the word munkar actually connotes acts which are instrumental in usurping the rights of other people. So this is the second thing which is mentioned. Fahsha is the first thing. Ya'murukum fil fahsha'i wal munkar. Al munkar is the second thing, and the third thing is wal baghi. Now baghi is arrogance and rebelliousness. arrogance and rebelliousness. And this, of course, means that a person takes undue advantage of his power and influence. He exceeds his limits and tries to usurp the rights of others, whether they are of his creator or of his fellow human beings. And that is why it is something which is detestable in the eyes of the Creator. And the Quran has very emphatically said, قُلْ إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ رَبِّيَ الْفَوَاحِشَ مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا وَمَا بَطَنَ وَالْإِثْمَ وَالْبَغِي بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ. Tell them, my Lord has forbidden all lewd acts, whether hidden or open, and evil and wrongful rebelliousness. Evil and wrongful rebelliousness. So, viewers, this is something that we have to understand, that as far as the Quran is concerned, it has given us basic, a basic code of conduct. This code of conduct is something that we have to understand. It relates to our everyday life. A person who is a Muslim, a person who is a human being, an ordinary human being, I mean, as I said earlier on, is something that has to be equated. And that is that unless you are a good human being, we cannot be a good Muslim. In fact, whatever religion that we follow, unless we have humanity ingrained deeply in ourselves, we cannot be followers or good followers of the religion that we follow. So, this is a very, very important and a very, very, I would say, significant element that stands ignored in most Muslim countries. And in fact, it is something that makes us stand out amongst the comity of nations as people who might be very virtuous or might be very observant of worship rituals, but as far as their character is concerned, as far as their conduct is concerned, it leaves a lot to be desired. So, something that we have to be very careful about. Next, we come to something which is very important and has been laid down in the Quran in a very, very emphatic way. And that is that what exactly are the moral standards which the Quran wants us to adopt? And these moral standards are something that we have to understand. They embrace our lives, they take hold of our lives, they make us realize that as far as humanity is concerned, we have to be torch bearers. We have to be torch bearers of these values. And not only for the society that we live in, but also, most importantly, for our next generation, for the children that we are rearing, for the next generation, which is now being groomed in our laps, which we can influence in the form of people who adhere to these values. So, these values are laid out in detail in Surah Bani Israel, which is the 17th Surah of the Quran. So I will take them one by one. And at this instance today, we will be just looking at them briefly, one by one, and looking at some of the important aspects of their translation. But inshallah, in our next session, we will be talking about them in more detail. So the words are لا تجعل مع الله إلها آخر فتقعد مذموما مخذولا. So the first thing is, serve no other God except God, lest on the day of judgment you are left blameworthy and disgraceful. In other words, the most important thing is that we have to worship one God. It is the foundational teaching of our religion, Tawheed, monotheism. We cannot serve more than one God. And the Quran is very harsh, the Almighty is very harsh on people who take to polytheism simply because it is arrogance, it is imputing a lie, a falsehood to God Almighty, something that those people who commit, they actually demonstrate the fact that they are doing something on their own, because as the Quran and the Almighty have pointed out at a number of occasions, that had there been more than one deity, God said that I would have been the first one to point them out. When I have not pointed out something, then you are doing something which is a self-created. It is something that has been self-propelled, and hence it has absolutely no basis. And that is why it is said that if you associate anyone with God, then what will happen is that on the day of judgment, you will be condemned. You will be totally condemned, and you will be consigned to hell, fire, and eternal hellfire. If you do if you commit polytheism consciously and intentionally, then this is something that is going to take hold of the person in the hereafter. And that is why it is said, mazmuma makhzula, that you will be left disgraced and totally condemned in the hereafter. The next thing which is mentioned is وَقَضَىٰ رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ. So the next thing is that your Lord has enjoined you to worship none but Him. Again, that is something that is absolutely understandable, that someone who has created us, someone who has made us, someone who has brought us into existence, what is the right of any other person being worshipped except the one that who has created us? So, وَقَضَىٰ رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ, that God has made this decision of His and He's conveyed this to us, that you must worship one God. You cannot worship more than one God. It would be outright arrogance, rebelliousness, and injustice on our part if we do so. So we have to state this directive in a positive way. The first was a negative way, that you should not associate partners with God, and now it is said that you must worship one God. And then something which is a norm of the Quran, something which is a style of the Quran, that what is being said here is something that is often associated right after being said, is the rights of the parents. So after the rights of the Almighty, the rights of the parents are mentioned, and that is وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا إِمَّا يَبْلُغَنَّ عِنْدَكَ الْكِبَرَ أحدهما أو كلاهما فلا تقل لهما أف ولا تنهرهما وقل لهما قولا كريما واخفض لهما جناح الذل من الرحمة وقل رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا ربكم أعلم بما في نفوسكم إن تكونوا صالحين فإنه كان للأوابين غفورا. Now these are sublime verses, and you can see how Quran has gone into detail regarding the treatment of parents. So it is said, and to treat well your parents. If either of both of them attain old age in your life before you, show them no sign of impatience, nor scold them while answering, but speak to them with good etiquette and treat them with humility and tenderness, and say, Lord, be merciful to them the way they nursed me in childhood. Your Lord fully knows what is in your hearts. If you remain obedient to Him, then you should know that He forgives those who turn to Him. So once again, what is mentioned here is in detail that how specially the parents have to be treated, in particular when they reach old age. Yes, when they reach old age, they become a little bit repetitive, they become a little bit annoying, they become a little bit childish, they behave like a child. And it is here that we have to show patience, we have to show forbearance, and we must remember that we were infants in their laps, and we were even more childish than being a child. We were even more jittery, we were all irritable, and we did all sorts of annoying things, but they bore all this nonsense from us with a lot of fortitude and patience and perseverance. So it is but right for us to return this small favor in a due fashion, and we must not be irritable. And the Quran has said, فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا. Then show no sign of impatience and do not scold them. This is something that is a very important aspect, that when parents are in this situation, then you must not in any way be harsh to them. And that harshness is something, if it comes out in this way, then yes, a parent might still forgive us, because being a parent, that is what they do normally. But still, it would be a stain in our own tazkiyah, in our own spiritual purification. So we have to be absolutely careful about them. And then going on with the same in the same vein, in the same fashion, the Quran extends this to other relatives, and it says, وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ وَالْمِسْكِينَ وَابْنَ السَّبِيلِ وَلَا تُبَذِّرْ تَبْذِيرًا إِنَّ الْمُبَذِّرِينَ كَانُوا إِخْوَانَ الشَّيَاطِينِ وَكَانَ الشَّيْطَانُ لِرَبِّهِ كَفُورًا وَإِمَّا تُعْرِضَنَّ عَنْهُ ابْتِغَاءَ رَحْمَةٍ مِّن رَّبِّكَ تَرْجُوهَا فَقُل لَّهُمَا قَوْلًا مَيْسُورًا. So now, the next thing which is mentioned, as I said, is that other relatives are included, and it is said that you have to be kind to the near ones, and you have to give their due, and also the destitute and to the traveler. And do not squander your wealth wastefully, for the wasteful are Satan's brothers, and Satan is ever ungrateful to his Lord. And if you have to disregard those in need because you are seeking your Lord's bounty, of which you are waiting, then speak to them affectionately. So the first thing which is mentioned is that the same attitude has to be meted out to other relatives as well. And that, of course, is something that we've already discussed, that we have to be kind and compassionate to those of our kin, and also to the destitute and the traveler. Of course, travelers, whether they are of today or in this or of the recent past or of the distant past, they become dependent. At times, they are asylum seekers. At times, they are relocating to a new land, and they need that same compassion and sympathy. And then, of course, it is said that do not squander your wealth wastefully. So, tabzir is something when you start wasting your money on things which are absolutely trivial and needless. And the Quran says that those who do so, they are Satan's brothers, and Satan is ungrateful to his Lord, and that is what he makes us when we start spending like this. He makes us ungrateful, and we keep on spending without realizing that this wealth is like a trust, it's like an amana that has been given to us. And then the important thing which is said is that if we have to refuse someone in giving any charity that the other person might be demanding, then you have to speak to that person, kullahuma qawlum maysura, politely. Politely. If you have to refuse someone, then that refusal must not be harsh. It has to be polite. It has to be gentle. Because if it is polite, if it's not polite, then you are going to damage and hurt the ego of the person. So that is something which the Quran does not want us to do. And it says that you must be very, very polite if you have to refuse them. You have to speak to them in an affectionate way. And then the next thing which is said here, as you can see, is that as far as our life is concerned, we have to be very, very considerate of the fact when the Quran says, وَلَا تَجْعَلْ يَدَكَ مَغْلُولَةً إِلَىٰ عُنُقِكَ وَلَا تَبْسُطْهَا كُلَّ الْبَسْطِ فَتَقْعُدَ مَلُومًا مَحْسُورًا إِنَّ رَبَّكَ يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَقْدِرُ إِنَّهُ كَانَ بِعِبَادِهِ خَبِيرًا بَصِيرًا. And that is that do not be miserly or prodigal, that as a result of it, you should either earn reproach to indigence. Indeed, your Lord gives abundantly to whom he pleases and sparingly to whom he pleases. He is aware of his servants and is observing them. So we must adopt the mean path, neither overspending nor being miserly. So that is the message of the Quran, that to be charitable, that can only be possible if we have that temperate attitude. If we have temperance in our attitude, neither we overspend, nor we are miserly, nor are we stingy. Stinginess is something that breaks the back of a family. If the head of the family is stingy, family will be affected by it. So that stinginess is something that must never be part of our personality. And then the Quran has said something which is very heinous, and it was a practice of the times of the Quran when the Quran was being revealed. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ خَشْيَةَ نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُهُمْ وَإِيَّاكُمْ إِنَّ قَتْلَهُمْ كَانَ خِطْئًا كَبِيرًا. And then وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشَةً إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشَةً وَسَاءَ سَبِيلًا. So it is said that do not kill your children for fear of poverty. We provide for them and for you, because killing them is a heinous crime. We all know that this is something that has happened in the past. It has happened in many societies, especially in the Arab society, where infant girls were buried alive, thinking that they are not earning hands and they would be a burden on a society or on a family, so they would be buried alive. So the Quran has said here that don't kill your children because of poverty. Do you think that you're going to provide them? That's not the case. God provides you as well as your children. So you are no one to think that, well, how will I provide my child? And it is something which is a heinous practice. One just shudders when one even imagines how one can kill one's infant by one's own hands. And do not even go near adultery, because it is blatant lewdness and a very evil path. So adultery or fornication is something that severs the family system from its very roots. We have to understand that the most important building block in society is the family. If a family is disturbed, if the family is not preserved and protected, the whole society will be inflicted with anarchy. And the building block of a society, which is the family, has to, in all costs, to be preserved. And the thing which damages it is out of marriage relations. Any extramarital relation is going to damage that marital relationship with the spouse. And that is something which has absolutely no grounds and no basis and no justification. So the next thing which is mentioned, of course, is in a very emphatic way. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ وَمَنْ قُتِلَ مَظْلُومًا فَقَدْ جَعَلْنَاهُ لِوَلِيِّهِ سُلْطَانًا فَلَا يُسْرِفْ فِي الْقَتْلِ إِنَّهُ كَانَ مَنْصُورًا, which means, and remember, if someone, and do not wrongfully kill any person whose life has been made or held sacred by God. And remember that if someone is slain unjustly, we have given his heir the authority. Then he should not also exceed limits in his revenge because he has been helped. So again, something which is important for the preservation of a society is protection of life, protection of human life. No one has the right to take the life of a person, no one whatsoever. Of course, if on the basis of certain crimes for which the Quran stipulates the death punishment, no one has the right. And that too, if a person thinks that some person has done something that needs to be punished by the capital punishment, that cannot be done by the person himself at all. It has to be reported to the authorities. And again, because this is a Meccan surah, in the Meccan surahs, in the absence of the state, so the heirs were given, the heirs of the slain person were given this authority that if they wanted, they could even forgive people, the slayer. And again, of course, this was the case in the case of when the society did not have a system of government installed. But now that the system of government was installed in Medina and later on in all countries and all the polities, so now we have two important things, that if a person has to forgive the slayer, then of course the heirs of the family have to be the forgivers as well as the state, because now this is also a crime against the state. So both the state and the heirs of the family, unless they jointly forgive, this forgiveness cannot take place, and they must not exceed this in any way, the right that they have been given in this regard. So the next thing which is then mentioned is that ولا تقربوا مال اليتيم إلا بالتي هي أحسن حتى يبلغ أشده وأوفوا بالعهد إن العهد كان مسؤولا وأوفوا الكيل إذا كلتم وزنوا بالقسطاس المستقيم ذلك خير وأحسن تأويلا. So now what is mentioned here is that do not approach the wealth of orphans except in a just manner until they reach maturity, and keep your promises, because you shall be held accountable for promises. And give full measure when you measure, and weigh with correct scales. This is better and fairer as far as the consequences are concerned. So now a couple of things have been mentioned. First of all, if a guardian is taking care of an orphan, then he must not tamper with the wealth of the orphan in any way which is absolutely uncalled for or is unjust or is extortionism in its essence. Similarly, what is being said here is that you must keep your promises, because innal ahda kana mas'ula, that people will be held accountable for the promises that they have given. A person should be very careful in promising. If a person is not able to fulfill their promise and he knows that, even before giving his word or her word, he or she should not make that commitment at all, because then accountability is something that's going to take place. And if we have to measure and weigh in correct scales whenever we are sitting in the market as tradesmen, as people, then it should be an absolutely correct measure that we are giving, because it would be dishonesty in weighing and measuring wrongfully. And that is what has been said here. And then it is said, لا تقف ما ليس لك به علم لا تقف ولا تقف ما ليس لك به علم إن السمع والبصر والفؤاد كل كان عنه مسؤولا ولا تمشي في الأرض مرحا إنك لن تخرق الأرض ولن تبلغ الجبال طولا كل ذلك كان سيئه عند ربك مكروها ذلك مما أوحى إليك ربك من الحكمة ولا تجعل مع الله إلها آخر فَتُلْقَى فِي جَهَنَّمَ مَلُومًا مَدْحُورًا. Again, very powerful words, very, very powerful words. So it is said, and do not go after what you know not, because eyes, ears, and heart, all of them shall be questioned. Again, something of a very, very important advice, that something that we don't know and we just make a conjecture of is absolutely forbidden. We must not speculate, we must not go after things or make an estimation of things that we have no idea about, because whatever we do will be held accountable for that. And of course, it is said that as far as your own character is concerned, then the pinnacle of our character is humility. And the opposite of humility is arrogance. And that is precisely what is said here, that do not walk conceitedly on the earth, because neither can you split the earth, nor can you rival the mountains in stature. The evil of each of these to your Lord is very displeasing. So arrogance is something that is taken up here, and it is said that the way you walk, your own gait reflects your personality. And if you walk in a way that shows your arrogance, your haughtiness, it is something which is absolutely unbecoming of a human being. A human being has to be humble. And if your gait does not show your humility, then you have got it all wrong. All this is absolutely evil. And then it is said that this is the wisdom which your Lord has revealed to you. Hold on steadfastly to it, and in the end, listen once more. Serve no other deity besides God, lest as a result you should be cast into hell, condemned and rejected. So, once again, when these verses end, they give us two important indications. First, these directives are from among Al Hikmah, which is, of course, wisdom, and one of the categories, as we all know, of religion itself. And the second thing is once again something that has been repeated from the very first verse, and that is, do not serve any other deity. Remember, this section of verses started off with this very, very emphatic announcement: do not serve any other God. You should not regard any other God to be God. And it ends on the same note as well. So this is a very common aspect of the Quran, that things which are very important, they encircle a set of directives. It started off with the assertion that God is one. And if you look, that it ends with the same assertion that God is one. Do not in any way associate partners with God. So in this session, we have just gone through in a very, I would say, perfunctory way to discuss these basic morals and these fundamental principles, which we can call the 10 Commandments of the Quran as well. But inshallah, we'll be going in more detail in our next sessions. And until then, you have the time to ask any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our first question of the day asks, मुशरिकीन मक्का अपनी शिर्क की दलील या तौजीह में अपने आबा व अजदादों की तवातुर अमल को पेश करते थे। इससे ये बात वाضح होती है कि तवातुर को किस चीज़ की अथॉरिटी के सबूत में पेश नहीं किया जा सकता है। इस तनाजुर में कुरान और सुन्नत के तवातुर के क्या हैसियत रह जाती है?
You see, we have to understand that tawatur is something that is the mere transmission of something in a certain way. It just proves the certainty of something. That certainty could itself be right or wrong. Tawatur itself does not, I mean, something evil can be tawatur, something good can be tawatur. So tawatur itself is not right or wrong. It just gives you certitude. So it gives you certitude that whatever you are receiving is correct. So it is just laying credence to the authenticity of the contents, which might be wrong as well. So it is something that we have to realize. Let me give you another example. So we know that the Christians think that Jesus was crucified, and the Quran has negated that in the light of knowledge. Now, the thing is that it is through tawatur that the crucifixion of Jesus was transmitted since the time of Jesus himself. I mean, the day they thought that they had killed him or crucified him. And that thing reached the extent of tawatur. But that thing itself was not correct. So they had a tawatur on something, or they had held tawatur on something which itself was not correct. So you see, what I'm trying to point out here is that tawatur is an instrument of giving something certitude, that yes, whatever is being transmitted is correctly transmitted. But if that thing is right or wrong, that's another thing. The transmission is correct, but what is being transmitted, whether that's right or wrong, that's to be judged separately. I hope this makes it clear.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our next question asks, in our context, zakat is not given to the state as an obligatory state tax, but it's given to a person it's given in person to the needy people. In conformity and true spirit of what the Quran mentions as dhil qurba, is it permissible to give zakat to one's near ones, even to the extent of brothers and sisters, if they are in need?
That's not an issue. You see, the mandatory part of zakat is something that will be collected by the state. So anything which is over and above that, you can give it to yourself. So, and there are instances in which the state is not collecting, like today, many states are not collecting zakat, and this is a Makkan surah. So, Surah Bani Israel, in which this directive has come, is a Meccan surah. It's a society in which there was no state authority. So, that is why we find the Quran telling people that they have to pay to their Zawil Qurba or and themselves. But and in the presence of state authority, the state authority will do so. So, it will collect the money that you have and it will return it back to the society, which includes all those in need. But for example, if you have someone who you would like to use to specially help, then once you give your due to the state, you can always spend more on your Zawil Qurba.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, family planning programs are instituted in the context that a country's economic resources are not capable of catering to the needs of the escalating population. Here, stimulus for such birth control programs is economic crunch. Does this not tantamount to what is mentioned in Quran that do not kill your children for fear of poverty?
How can we regard someone who is not even born to be a child? This would be a childish argument, I would say. I mean, what people argue is that by birth control, we are killing our children. I mean, the children that has not been, the child that has not even been born, how can we even think that we are murdering that child? So, murder amounts to something in which once life comes into existence, then you tamper with that life. That is what is murder. Something which does not even come into existence or is not allowed to come into existence for other reasons, that in no way can be called murder.
Thank you very much for that explanation, Dr. Saleem. I had a question on the same topic of birth control. So, some people use the same verses to continue to have children despite like either their wives being overburdened by multiple pregnancies or them not being able to afford future children's anyway, but they continue to have them because they're like, oh, God told us to have children without taking into consideration their resources, family
Hmm.
plan, etc., and the health of the mother.
So this is again the other extreme. So on the one hand, people will start using contraceptives and thinking that they are murdering their children, and on the other hand, they'll do nothing and just let the children be born every year. Again, this is something that has to be subject to your own uh, intellect, your own planning. Of course, that relates to your own resources also. It relates to the time that you can give to the next born child, and it also essentially relates to the health of the mother as well. So all these considerations, they have to be kept in mind. So producing children does not mean that you go on producing children blindly without even realizing that you have time to give them for their mentoring and their grooming, or whether your wife is capable of bearing more children, or whether you have sufficient resources. I mean, these are all things that you have to at all cost plan. And that is something that, I mean, we are not doing properly. So either we think that using contraceptives is murder, or we think that we should just do nothing. The truth is in between.
So, just as a follow-up, because Allah mentions that He will bring the resources for you after you have children, that's the reason why some poor people quote to continue to have children. And
No, see, what is being said is that do not kill your children for fear of poverty. So it's being mentioned that killing the children is not something that is the right thing to do. Once a once a soul has come into existence, then you cannot tamper with it. God is going to provide that soul, not you. So that is once a child has been born. However, in the absence of that, there is no such thing that has been promised.
thank you so much for that clarification, Dr. Saleem. Any more questions? Please raise your hand or type them in the chat. We'll be taking topic-related questions for now. If we're out of topic-related questions, then we can open the floor to off-topic questions. But for now, if you have anything related to our topic today, please raise your hand. It seems that we're out of topic-related questions. Dr. Saleem, should we move on to off-topic questions?
Yes, you may please.
Okay. Off-topic questions, welcome.
Hmm.
No, it seems everybody is very clear. So yeah, it seems that we don't have any more questions left. In that case, we can end the session early. Is there anything you'd like to add, Dr. Saleem? Oh,
I think it's a
sorry, we
welcome
just
break.
got a raised hand. Oh, so we before the break, we just got a raised hand. Amar,
Okay.
please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa
Uh,
salam.
Dr. Shehzad, I just want to ask the explanation of an ayah. It's probably Surah Al-Ma'idah,
Mhm.
where it is said that the animosity has been created in Christians and Jews till till Qiyamah.
Yeah, really.
Am I right
Right.
about the?
Yes,
Okay.
that's it. فَأَغْرَيْنَا
So
بَيْنَهُمُ الْعَدَاوَةَ إِلَى يَوْمِ
yeah,
الْقِيَامَةِ.
yeah, yeah. So I was trying to find the but I thought that you may end the session. So basically, my question is that in the current circumstances,
Mhm.
sometimes it seems difficult to explain how it is happening and what is the explanation for this.
Well, in the current circumstances, if you look at the grand scheme of things, you will see that the Christians are heavily dependent on the Jews for their survival and their sustenance. And in spite of not being wanting to have them on their backs, they are virtually ruling them. So that animosity at times it becomes very, apparent, as was the case if you look at some of the European history, in which the Jews and the Christians they fought with each other, especially. And then the Christians persecuted the Jews. They tried to kick them out of their own countries. This happened a while ago also in the time of Hitler. And that again is something that we know is something that is not of a distant past. And it is something that at time becomes prominent and at time it becomes a little bit not prominent, but it is there. And also, that particular animosity is also between their sects. For example, the sects which they follow, if you go in deeper detail, you see that there is a lot of flack that they suffer from each other whenever there are religious debates between Judaism and Christianity. So the Jews have refused to accept Jesus as a prophet of God, and this has created a lot of bad taste between both religions. And this is something that is continuing to be a thorn in their relations. So, someone that one denomination regards to be the Son of God, they go as far as regarding Jesus to be the Son of God. The other denomination says that he is not even a prophet, he's an impostor. He's someone who is an impostor. So, such is the disparity. And this disparity, and of course, in their religion, has caused a lot of bad taste between the two. And if because the fact that today these debates might not come uh, very prominently in front of us because of the creed of secularism, in which a lot of things have been sort of ironed out. But the thing is that this is still like molten lava, and it can erupt anytime. It has erupted many times in the past as well.
Yeah, definitely there is quite a bit evidence in the past, but currently it seems that as far as the political level, seems they both are united. Christians are
So you see,
protecting
it is
them.
we have to understand when the Quran speaks of a timeline, it's not always that that timeline is going to be. Remember, it's speaking of the timeline since the time of Prophet Muhammad to the Day of Judgment. So that's a timeline which is a very vast timeline. Small instances of reprieve cannot be the exception. They are just small periods of reprieve. And again, in these
Yes.
periods of reprieve, as I said, if you still follow today's debates between Jews and Christians, you will find that acrimony is still there.
Right,
They are
right.
constantly at war with one another. I just give you this example that if you talk to a Jew regarding Jesus, yes, there are times they want to be politically correct, but their orthodox view is very, very harsh regarding Jesus.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Bisma, please go ahead.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Saleem. Assalamualaikum, Mariam.
Right.
Yes, I have two questions, Dr. Saleem. The first one is, who is the Messiah that the Jews are waiting for? Who is, what
So,
does...
they are waiting for a Messiah. We just don't know who he is. Of course, they know, but they think that their scriptures give news of a Messiah. And to us, that Messiah is Jesus. To the Christians, it is Jesus. But to them, it is neither Jesus nor Muhammad. And there is some third prophet that they are waiting for. because they think that the Messiah could not have been crucified, because Christians think that he was crucified or Jesus was crucified. So they think a Messiah, how can a Messiah who is going to be a retriever for the whole world be crucified? And for Prophet Muhammad, of course, they are not also willing to accept that he is a prophet. So, in the absence of this, because the Torah mentions the coming of a prophet near the end of time, and who is going to be a Messiah, so that prediction in the Torah is actually regarding Prophet Muhammad, or at times even Jesus has been predicted. But because both Jesus and Muhammad have been denied by the Jews, so they are still waiting for someone.
So we as humans do not. It's either Hazrat Isa or Prophet Muhammad. We do not
Of
know
course,
either
there's
of.
no other, no other person is going to come now.
Okay. Dr. Saleem, another question I had was the books that you have just published on Hadith. What exactly, how many volumes are there? Where are they available? And what do they exactly have in
So,
them?
so you see, this is part of, or as I have mentioned, it's a sequel to Ustaz Javed Ahmad Ghamadi's Hadith project. So this Hadith project has two sections. One of them is the compilation of our Hadiths which are acceptable and authentic in a particular format. So that is what Ustaz is doing with some of his students. So the part that I'm assigned is the other part, and that is narratives which are not worthy of authenticity, which are not acceptable. They have to be filtered out, and the reasons of their rejection have to be documented. So these 3 volumes, they actually document those narratives which are not authentic and they cannot be accepted. And the reasons for their rejection are also formulated there. It's a work in progress. I don't know how many volumes I'm able to produce as far as I can go. I know that there's a big expanse that is waiting actually. Lots of ahadith that still need to be worked upon. There are some that have already been critically evaluated by some authorities, but then there are other angles as well in which those rejection reasons might be supplemented, which I have done in some cases as well. So this is a work in progress. As I said, it might take many, many years. It might take some more lives as well. And this is available. I mean, because it's recently published, I think at the moment it's available in Pakistan, but soon it will be available at all the Al-Mord centers, wherever we have a center in the US, in the UK, in Australia, in Germany, in India, in Canada.
Okay.
So,
And in English. And is there the volumes, are they specific to like timelines? So are you covering it chronologically as the hadith, or is
no,
it
I'm covering them as per the whenever I fish them out.
right?
It's like I'm tracking them. I'm lying in ambush for them. So I keep tracking these books. At times, I pick up narratives that people often narrate on the TV or on the social media. At other times, I pick up narratives that have been specifically outlined for this purpose. Still, other times, I look at some of the not very popular compilations of hadiths and then fish out those narratives. So it's like a movement that I do, which is not. It's not that I have ordered it in a particular fashion, but it goes from one to another, more of like a dot to dot
Okay.
circular way.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. Appreciate that so much. Really excited to read it and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Just a word of caution that these volumes are, they are quite technical. They are dense in their reading because they use technical language as well. But yes, of course, you can read. But what you can see from the title of these narratives when you look at the contents page is that all these narratives which are mentioned, the text of the narratives will always be cited with all the variants, and there would be a diagram of those variants, like a schematic illustration, and then you'll be educated on the reasons of their rejection.
So they're very academic in nature, and I'm assuming if they're dense and
That is
heavy.
that is what I'm saying is that you must not be very excited because some of the narratives are very dense in their presentation because of the terminology used. But other than that, you can have an idea that at least the narrative which is under discussion, the reason that it is under discussion is that it's not an authentic one.
So is it in English, Dr. Saleem? That's my question because, or is it in
Yes,
Urdu?
it is.
It's in English. Okay, and the everything is bibliographies, everything is cited. So even if something is extremely dense and academic, for a student
Correct.
who it is something that they
So
can.
we have a glossary. We have a glossary at the end, so you can consult the glossary.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. We have another question in the chat that asks, can we regard the income tax, which is compulsorily deducted from our monthly income by the state, as zakat? The state also
Yes.
deducts zakat separately on the first of every Ramadan.
So yes, this is a very commonly acknowledged view that I have been given and being given, and of course our teacher Javed Ahmed Ghamidi he's been giving this for the better part of his life, that the zakat that we give and the tax that we give are the same, virtually the same. So the tax that you give can be counted as your zakat, and if that tax exceeds your zakat liability, then you actually are in surplus and you can use that tax for the next year's zakat as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Amar, please go ahead.
Dr. Saleem, regarding the same ayah, I just have the further question. I will read the translation in Urdu. So, हमने उनकी बाहमी अदावत और बुग्ज क़यामत तक के लिए डाल दिया, और ये जब लड़ाई के लिए आग जलाते हैं खुदा उसको बुझा देता है, और ये मुल्क में फसाद के लिए दौड़े फिरते हैं, और खुदा फसाद करने वालों को दोस्त नहीं रखता. My question is that is this any kind of ayah for that time, or the next one regarding the war
So
or something,
basically, what
fasad?
is said is kullama
Or
awqadu nara lil harbi atfa Allah wa yas'auna fil ardi fasada. So this seems to be something which is connected for those times. I need to look more deeply to give you an exact answer, but to me it does seem that this is something that is seemingly for that time, that whenever they want to create a fuss about it, God through
right,
His own power does not allow them. But as I said, this is something that I would need to be more particular about when I'll consult it, and you can check with me.
right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Any more questions? We have another 5 minutes almost to the session. I'll give a few more seconds. Or if you're working on typing something or formulating your question, you can send me a quick chat. Okay, that seems to be it, Dr. Saleem. Thank you very, very much for another fantastic session. Inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow in another session of textual study of the Quran. Take care, everyone. For those of you who are in the US, there's gonna be a winter storm, so please stay warm, cozy, and hunker down.